What's going on YouTube? Thank you guys so much for clicking on today's video. In today's video, I'm going to be showcasing all 16 of my loadouts that I believe are the best loadouts to use in PvP. Now, if you guys have any suggestions or any type of build that you consider your favorite that is not listed in this video, make sure to leave a comment down below and leave your build. I would love to talk about different build ideas that you guys may have. Also, if you find this video helpful, make sure to leave a like on the video, share it out to a friend, subscribe if you're new, and let's jump right into it. Alright, so let's get started with loadout number 1. This is my demo AR setup. Now on this setup, we are trying to stack as much critical hit chance and critical hit damage as we possibly can. Critical hit chance and critical hit damage are the main attributes for a DPS build. For our specialization, we are using the Demolitionist. Now with an AR build, you always want to keep the range advantage. That is the whole point of using high DPS. So with this high DPS build and the fact that we're running Unbreakable as one of the talents, we're going to take advantage of some of the stats that Demolitionist provides us. Now one of the stats is going to be the Demolitionist Tactical Link. This is going to give our group members an extra 5% damage to targets at a cover. Now damage to targets at a cover multiplies our group members' weapon damage. In addition to that, we also have Crisis Response. So when our armor is reduced to 0, it's going to refill all of our weapon ammo in our magazine. This pairs perfectly with Unbreakable. Now, before we move on, one thing to note is that a lot of these builds that I'm showcasing today are also going to be viable in Title Update 15. The only thing that may change on this build is going to be my weapon talent, because In Sync is being removed from the shield, and my shield skill is also going to be removed. I may use the Defender Drone, I may use a decoy or even a jammer pulse, so that is going to change. However, the build stays the same, so keep that in mind. For our primary weapon of choice, we are using the Carbine 7. The Carbine 7 is one of my favorite assault rifles to use in the game. Of course, we have damage to targets at a cover as one of the attributes with the talent In Sync. For our mask, we are utilizing the Coyote Mask, the best in slot. And if you don't know what the Coyote Mask does, for you and all allies, you're going to gain a bonus based on the distance of the last enemy you hit. 0 to 15 meters is 25% critical hit damage, 15 to 25 is 10% critical hit damage and 10% critical hit chance, and 25 meter plus is going to be 25% critical hit chance. For our chest piece, we are using Seska. This is going to provide us an additional 10% critical hit chance. We have 12% critical hit damage as the attribute, 6% critical hit chance, 11.8% critical hit damage mod with the talent Unbreakable. When your armor is depleted, repair 50% of your armor with a cooldown of 60 seconds. For our holster, we're using Grupo. This is going to provide us an additional 15% critical hit damage. We have a blue armor core providing us an additional 170k armor, 6% critical hit chance, and 12% critical hit damage. For our backpack, we're using Fenris. This is going to increase our assault rifle damage by 10%, 6% critical hit chance, 12% critical hit damage, 11.6% critical hit damage mod with the talent Vigilance. Increases total weapon damage by 25%. Taking damage disables this buff for 4 seconds. For our gloves, we are using Contractor Gloves. This is going to provide us an additional 170k armor. We have 8% additional damage to armor, which multiplies our weapon damage, 12% critical hit damage. For our knee pads, we're using the Fox's Prayer knee pads. This provides us an additional 8% damage to targets at a cover, which is going to multiply our weapon damage, and 12% critical hit damage. Moving on to loadout number 2, Spotter. Now this is going to be one of the metas in Title Update 15, as we're going to have more ways to pulse our target. We are utilizing the Technician Specialization. The Technician Specialization provides us with the linked laser pointer attachment. When equipping this to your weapon, every time you ADS a target, it's automatically going to pulse them. Now on top of that, you also get an additional skill tier. Now with that additional skill tier, it's going to give us an additional 15% effect duration on the pulse. With that being said, for our primary weapon of choice, we are utilizing the FAL. 10% damage to targets at a cover as the attribute with the talent In Sync. And if we go into our mod sheet and we go down to the barrel, we have the linked laser pointer equipped. For our secondary weapon, we're utilizing the Nemesis Marksman Rifle. For our mask, we have Seska. This is going to increase our critical hit chance by 10%, 170k armor, 12% critical hit damage, 6% critical hit chance, with 11.2% critical hit damage mod. For our chest piece, we have Fenris. This is going to increase our assault rifle damage by 10%, 6% critical hit chance, 12% critical hit damage, with the talent Spotter. Amplifies total weapon and skill damage by 15% to pulsed enemies. For our holster, we're utilizing the improvised holster. I wanted to do more damage on this build, so I decided to add Improvise just for that additional mod slot. We have 170k armor, 6% critical hit chance, 12% critical hit damage, with 11.1% critical hit damage mod. For our backpack, we have Grupo. This is going to increase our critical hit damage by 15%, 6% critical hit chance, 12% critical hit damage. The mod, 11.6% critical hit damage, with the talent Vigilance. Increases total weapon damage by 25%. Taking damage disables this buff for 4 seconds. For our gloves, we have Contractor Gloves. 8% damage to armor, 12% critical hit damage, 170k armor. And for our knee pads, we have the Fox's Prayer knee pads. 8% damage to targets out of cover, with 12% critical hit damage. Moving on to loadout number 3, Firewall AR. Now we're utilizing the Firewall specialization. Now the reason why we're utilizing the Firewall specialization is for the med kit. The armor kit is going to recover 200% armor and 200% health over 10 seconds with the Striker Ballistic Shield. The Striker Shield increases our damage bonus by 4% to any enemy that is in front of your shield. Keep in mind, in Title Update 15, the shields will no longer be a thing, so the only reason to use Firewall moving forward would be for the medkit. For our primary weapon of choice, we are using the Police M4. Now, I feel like the Police M4 is better than the FAMAS. Not only does the Police M4 have a better drop-off range, but it's a lot more accurate. You can also equip the 10% critical hit damage mod that you get from Firewall specialization. For our mask, we are using Coyote's Mask. 25% critical hit damage buff per enemy that is hit within 15 meters, 15 to 25 meters, 10% critical hit damage and 10% critical hit chance, 25 plus meters, 25% critical hit chance. For our chest piece, we have Seska, 10% critical hit chance, 12% critical hit damage, 6% critical hit chance, 11.8% critical hit damage, with the talent Unbreakable. For our holster, we have Grupo, 15% critical hit damage, 170k armor, 6% critical hit chance, 12% critical hit damage. For our backpack, we have Fenris, 10% assault rifle damage, 6% critical hit chance, 12% critical hit damage, 11.6% critical hit damage mod, with the talent Vigilance. Increases total weapon damage by 25%. Taking damage disables this buff for 4 seconds. For our gloves, we have Contractor Gloves, 170k armor, 8% damage to armor, and 12% critical hit damage. For our knee pads, we have the Fox's Prayer knee pads, 170k armor, 8% damage to targets out of cover, and 12% critical hit damage. Moving on to loadout number 4, Perfect Firewall. Now with this setup, we are utilizing the Everyday Carrier. This talent provides us with perfectly efficient, so when using an armor kit, it has a 75% chance not to consume the armor kit. Specialization armor kit bonus are increased by 50%. Now, when we take a look at the armor kit bonus, as Firewall recovers 200% armor and 200% health over 10 seconds, with the perfectly efficient chest piece, that's going to increase the armor repair to 300% and 300% health repair over 15 seconds instead of 10 seconds. I feel like the Firewall medkit needs to be reworked in PvP. There's a reason why a lot of people started chest swapping is because of the perfectly efficient chest piece bonus on top of the Firewall medkit regen. I have been in a lot of gunfights where the Firewall medkit has always been a crutch inside of a gunfight. If I am fighting another player and he pops a Firewall medkit, he's going to continue to regen in that fight, and essentially I'm not going to be able to do enough DPS to take him down. So I hope that the Firewall medkit gets a rework in the future, and maybe we get some sort of insta-kits or try to align this kit with the other medkit bonuses that we currently have, like Demo or Gunner or Sharpshooter, for example. For our primary weapon of choice, we are using the Lady Death, and for our secondary, we have the Apartment with the talent Perfectly Measured. The top half of the magazine has 20% rate of fire and negative 27% weapon damage. The bottom half of the magazine has negative 20% rate of fire and 33% total weapon damage. For our mask, we have Sokolov. This is going to provide us with an additional 10% SMG damage, 170k armor, 12% critical hit damage, 6% critical hit chance, with 11.2% critical hit damage mod. For our holster, we have Sokolov Concern. This is a second piece of the brand set, unlocking an additional 15% critical hit damage, 170k armor, 12% critical hit damage, and 6% critical hit chance. For our backpack, we are using the named Walker Harris Matador. This provides us with an additional 5% weapon damage, 170k armor, 12% critical hit damage, 6% critical hit chance, with the mod of 11.6% critical hit damage, the talent Perfect Adrenaline Rush. Whenever you are within 10 meters of an enemy, gain 12% bonus armor for 5 seconds, stacking up to 3 times with a cooldown of 5 seconds. For our gloves, we have Contractor Gloves, 170k armor, 8% damage to armor, with 12% critical hit damage. And for our knee pads, we have Fox's Prayer, 170k armor, 8% damage to targets out of cover, and 12% critical hit damage. Moving on to loadout number 5, Survivalist. The Survivalist specialization gives us the talent Distributed Repair for the medkit bonus. Armor kits now repair over 5 seconds instead of instantly, but also apply to group members within 20 meters. Since we are using the perfectly efficient chest piece, that's going to increase the repair to 7.5 seconds instead of instantly, but also apply to group members within 30 meters instead of 20. For our primary weapon of choice, we are using the FAMAS, 10% damage to targets out of cover as the attribute with the talent In Sync. For our secondary weapon, we are using the Eagle Bearer. For the talent Eagle Strike, accuracy increases as you continuously fire up to 30%. Headshot kills grant a tenacity buff for 15 seconds. The strength of tenacity is increased by 1% for body shots and 5% for headshots. Tenacity, 40 to 80% of damage taken is delayed until the buff expires. All of the total delayed damage is reduced for each enemy killed, while the buff is active up to 100% within 3 kills. Now, a great tip for the Eagle Bearer, if you guys get the tenacity buff, just make sure you switch your weapons before the tenacity buff expires. When switching your weapon, it's going to take all that delayed damage and instantly get rid of it. For our mask, we have Seska, 10% critical hit chance, 170k armor, 12% critical hit damage, 6% critical hit chance, and for the mod, 11.2% critical hit damage. The chest piece, everyday carrier, perfectly efficient, 1% armor regen, 170k armor, 4,925 HP per second armor regen, 12% critical hit damage, 11.8% critical hit damage. With the talent Perfectly Efficient, using an armor kit has a 75% chance not to consume the armor kit. Specialization armor kit bonuses are increased by 50%. For our holster, we have Grupo, 15% critical hit damage, 170k armor, 6% critical hit chance, 12% critical hit damage. For our backpack, we have Fenris, 10% assault rifle damage, 6% critical hit chance, 12% critical hit damage, 11.6% critical hit damage mod, and for the talent, Vigilance, increases total weapon damage by 25%. Taking damage disables this buff for 4 seconds. For our gloves, we have the Contractor Gloves, 170k armor, 8% damage to armor, and 12% critical hit damage. For our knee pads, we have the Fox's Prayer knee pads, 170k armor, 8% damage to targets out of cover, and 12% critical hit damage. Moving on to loadout number 6 is an AR tank build. Now, there's not much to really explain with this build. I just wanted to create a very tanky AR build that can give me a little bit more survivability and, of course, a lot more armor mitigation against skills and DPS. For our specialization, we're using Firewall. Primary weapon of choice is going to be the FAMAS with In Sync. The secondary is going to be the Eagle Bear. For our mask, we have Seska, 10% critical hit chance, 170k armor, 12% critical hit damage, 6% critical hit chance, 11.2% critical hit damage mod. For the chest piece, we have Grupo, 15% critical hit damage, 170k armor, 12% critical hit damage, 6% critical hit chance, 11.6% critical hit damage mod. The talent, Unbreakable. For our holster, we have Fenris, 10% assault rifle damage, 170k armor, 6% critical hit chance, and 12% critical hit damage. For our backpack, we have the named Walker Harris Matador, 5% weapon damage, 170k armor, 12% critical hit damage, 6% critical hit chance, 11.8% critical hit damage mod, the talent, perfect adrenaline rush. For our gloves, we have the Contractor Gloves, 170k armor, 8% damage to armor, 12% critical hit damage. For knee pads, we have the Fox's Prayer knee pads, 170k armor, 8% damage to targets out of cover, 12% critical hit damage. Moving on to loadout number 7, this is my SMG tank build. Now the same thing applies as my AR tank. I just wanted a tanky build that had more armor mitigation against skills and DPS. For our specialization, we are using Firewall. For our primary weapon of choice, we have the Lady Death with the Apartment, perfectly measured talent. For our mask, we have the Coyote Mask, 6% critical hit chance, 12% critical hit damage, and 11.2% critical hit damage mod. For our chest piece, we have Grupo, 15% critical hit damage, 170k armor, 12% critical hit damage, 6% critical hit chance, 11.8% critical hit damage mod, with the talent Unbreakable. For our holster, we have Sokolov Concern. This is going to increase our SMG damage by 10%, 170k armor, 12% critical hit damage, 6% critical hit chance. For our backpack, we have the Walker Harris named Matador, 5% additional weapon damage, 170k armor, 12% critical hit damage, 6% critical hit chance. For the mod, 11.6% critical hit damage, with the talent Perfect Adrenaline Rush. For our gloves, we have the Contractor Gloves, 170k armor, 8% damage to armor, 12% critical hit damage. And for our knee pads, we have the Fox's Prayer knee pads, 170k armor, 8% damage to targets out of cover, and 12% critical hit damage. Moving on to loadout number 8, Ridgeway's Pride. We are using the Firewall specialization for our primary weapon of choice. We are using the FAMAS within Sync. Now keep in mind, in Sync, once you hit an enemy, it's going to increase your skill damage by an additional 15%. So I highly recommend that you run this build with the Stinger Hive, as that's going to increase your PvP damage. It's also going to apply bleed, and we have the Ridgeway's Pride chest piece that is going to apply bleed, and once you shoot an enemy, when bleed applies, you're going to repair 3 to 48% of your armor per second for every enemy that is bleeding within 15 meters. Repair strength per number of bleeding enemies. 1 enemy bleeding, 3%. 2 enemies bleeding, 6%. 3 enemies bleeding, 12%. 4 enemies, 24%. 5 enemies, 48% repair. Now, we are also utilizing the Grudge SMG, which I feel like this is one of the best secondaries to use on this build because you can apply a status effect instantly just by hitting your target. But we also have the talent Perfect Vindictive. Killing an enemy with a status effect applied grants you and all allies within 20 meters 18% critical hit chance and 18% critical hit damage for 20 seconds. A tip that I have for you guys, if an enemy is in a downed state, you can switch to the Grudge, finish them off. It's going to apply bleed. It's also going to kill that enemy, and then it's going to proc that Perfect Vindictive talent. So I highly recommend that you guys use this SMG with this build. For our mask, we're using Grupo Sombra, 15% critical hit damage, 170k armor, 12% critical hit damage, 6% critical hit chance, and for the mod, 11.2% critical hit damage. For our holster, we're using Fenris, 10% assault rifle damage, 170k armor, 6% critical hit chance, 12% critical hit damage. For our backpack, we are using the named Golan Gear Anarchist Cookbook. This is going to increase our status effects by 10%, 170k armor, 6% critical hit chance, 12% critical hit damage, and for the mod, 11.6% critical hit damage with the talent Perfectly Wicked. Applying a status effect increases total weapon damage by 18% for 27 seconds. For our gloves, we're using the Contractor Gloves, 170k armor, 8% damage to armor, 12% critical hit damage. For knee pads, we have the Fox's Prayer knee pads, 170k armor, 8% damage to targets out of cover, and 6% critical hit chance. Moving on to loadout number 9, we have a shotgun build. We're using the Firewall specialization with the custom M870 as our primary weapon of choice. 10% damage to targets out of cover is one of the attributes with the talent In Sync. For our secondary weapon, we're utilizing the M870 Express. 10% damage to targets out of cover is one of the attributes with the talent Optimist. Weapon damage is increased by 3% for every 10% ammo missing from the magazine. For our mask, we have the Coyote's Mask. This is going to give us 6% critical hit chance, 12% critical hit damage, and 11.2% critical hit damage mod. For our chest piece, we are using the named Badger Tough 0F's chest piece. 10% additional shotgun damage, 170k armor, 6% critical hit chance, 12% critical hit damage, and the mod 11.8% critical hit damage with the talent Perfectly Unbreakable. When your armor is depleted, repair 55% of your armor. Cooldown 55 seconds. For our holster, we're using Grupo Sombra, 15% critical hit damage, 170k armor, 6% critical hit chance, and 12% critical hit damage. For our backpack, we have the named Walker Harris Matador, 5% additional weapon damage, 170k armor, 12% critical hit damage, 6% critical hit chance, with the mod 11.6% critical hit damage, with the talent Perfect Adrenaline Rush. For our gloves, we're using the Seska gloves. Now, the reason why I'm using this over Contractor is to make sure that my critical hit chance is over 50%. Seska provides us with 10% additional critical hit chance, 170k armor, 12% critical hit damage, and 6% critical hit chance. For our knee pads, we're using the Fox's Prayer knee pads, 170k armor, 8% damage to targets out of cover, and 12% critical hit damage. Moving on to loadout number 10 is my Hunter's Fury gear set. Now with this gear set, we are using the Gunner specialization. Now the reason why I'm using Gunner is because it's going to increase my armor on kill by an additional 10%. And also with the med kit, the armor kit's going to repair 100% armor and grant 30% bonus armor for 10 seconds. For our primary weapon of choice, we're using the Lady Death, and for our secondary, we have the Mop Shotgun. Now the reason why I'm using the Mop Shotgun is because that's going to also increase my armor on kill by an additional 10% with the talent Optimist. Weapon damage is increased by 3% for every 10% ammo missing from the magazine. For our mask, we have the Hunter's Fury gear set. 2-piece bonus is 15% shotgun damage, 15% SMG damage. For the 3-piece bonus, we have an additional 20% armor on kill and 100% health on kill. The 4-piece bonus, Apex Predator, enemies within 15 meters receive a debuff, amplifying your weapon damage against them by 20%. Killing a debuffed enemy with your weapon disorients other enemies within 5 meters and amplifies weapon damage by 5% for 10 seconds, stacking up to 5 times. The core attribute is 170k armor, 12% critical hit damage, and the mod 11.2% critical hit damage. For our chest piece, we're using Grupo Sombra. That's an additional 15% critical hit damage, 170k armor, 12% critical hit damage, 6% critical hit chance, with the mod of 11.8% critical hit damage, the talent Unbreakable. For our holster, we're using the Hunter's Fury gear set, 170k armor, 12% critical hit damage. For our backpack, we have the Sokolov Concern backpack. This increased our SMG damage by 10%, 12% critical hit damage, 6% critical hit chance, the mod 11.6% critical hit damage with the talent Adrenaline Rush. For our gloves, we have the Hunter's Fury gear set, 170k armor, 12% critical hit damage. And for our knee pads, we have the Hunter's Fury gear set, once again, 170k armor and 12% critical hit damage. Moving on to loadout number 11, this is my hazard protection build. Now we're using the Firewall specialization. For our primary weapon of choice, we have the Lady Death with the Apartment and Perfectly Measured. Now on this build, I have a total of 70% hazard protection. We're using the Booster Hive as my secondary skill. This is going to increase my hazard protection by an additional 21.8%. Now I have 70% hazard protection on the build plus the 21.8%. That gives me a total of 91.8% hazard protection for 5 seconds. For our mask, we have the Sokolov Concern brand set. That increases our SMG damage by 10%, 170k armor, 10% hazard protection, 6% critical hit chance, and for the mod, 11.2% critical hit damage. For the chest piece, we have Grupo Sombra. That's 15% critical hit damage, 12% critical hit damage, 10% hazard protection, 11.8% critical hit damage, and for the talent, Unbreakable. For our holster, we have another brand set of Sokolov Concern that unlocks the secondary bonus of 15% additional critical hit damage, 170k armor, 6% critical hit chance, and 10% hazard protection. For our backpack, we have the Walker Harris named Matador. This gives us an additional 5% weapon damage, 12% critical hit damage, 10% hazard protection. For the mod, we have 11.6% critical hit damage with the talent Perfect Adrenaline Rush. For our gloves, we have the Yaw Gear. This gives us an additional 10% hazard protection, 170k armor, 10% hazard protection, and 12% critical hit damage. For our knee pads, we have the Fox's Prayer knee pads, 170k armor, 8% damage to targets out of cover, and 6% critical hit chance. Moving on to loadout number 12. This is my Memento setup. Now, this is one of the best setups for solo play, and I'll show you guys the exact reason why. Now, we are using the Firewall specialization for our primary weapon of choice. We have the Police M4, 10% damage to targets out of cover is the attribute, with the talent in sync. Now, keep in mind, this is going to also increase our skill damage once we hit an enemy by an additional 15%. For our secondary weapon, we have the Eagle Bearer. For our mask, we have the Seska brand set, 10% additional critical hit chance, 170k armor, 12% critical hit damage, 6% critical hit chance, and for the mod, 11.2% critical hit damage. For our chest piece, we have Fenris Group, 10% additional assault rifle damage, 12% critical hit damage, 6% critical hit chance. For the mod, 11.8% critical hit damage with the talent Unbreakable. For our holster, we have Grupo Sombra. This provides us with additional 15% critical hit damage, 170k armor, 6% critical hit chance, and 12% critical hit damage. Now for our gloves, I'm using the Improvised gloves. The Improvised gloves provides us with an additional mod slot for the gloves. Now I highly recommend that you guys use the Improvised gloves over the Contractor gloves, and I'll show you why. Now if I equip the Contractor gloves, pretty much what that's going to do is it's going to lower my stats. So now I'm at 48% crit chance and 164.6% crit damage. The fact that I don't have the Coyote's mask to increase my critical hit chance threshold because I already have an exotic as my backpack, I now have to change my mods so my crit chance goes up. So the only mod that I can change here is right here for my grip. I'm going to take off the 10% and go with the laser pointer to get that extra 5% crit chance. Now that we are over that 50% threshold, one thing to keep in mind, Contractor gloves, the reason why it doesn't hit as hard as Improvised, because my crit damage is at 154%. If it was at 160% crit damage, the Contractor gloves would hit harder than the Improvised gloves, and I'll show you guys now. So we're in the firing range here, right? We have the Veterancy changed to Invulnerable Elite. I'm going to change this to 5 meters just to make it easy. So I'm not going to proc any of my talents just to test the base damage. So right here, as you can see, I'm critting for 258,089. As you see, damage last hit. So now we're going to go back here. We're going to put on the Improvised gloves. I have 11.1% critical hit damage mod. And now we're going to check our stats. Now I'm at 59% critical hit chance, so I have more room for critical hit damage. So we're going to go back to our inventory. We're going to change that mod back to that 10% critical hit damage, which is right here. And now that we have that, we're going to take a look at stat sheet, 54 and 175.7. So going back to the M4, I'm going to reload. So last hit was 258K. We're going to then try again. So 258,089, 258,777. So as you can see, the Improvised hits a little bit harder. For our knee pads, we have the Fox's Prayer knee pads, 170k armor, 8% damage to targets out of cover, and 12% critical hit damage. For our backpack, we have the Memento. This provides us with 15% weapon damage, 170k armor, +1 skill tier, and for my mod, 11.6% critical hit damage. Now the talent kill confirmed. Enemies you kill drop a trophy on death. Collecting trophies provides both a short and long-term buff, the first of which scales with the number of core attributes equipped and lasts 10 seconds. So every red core is 5% weapon damage, every blue core is 10% bonus armor, and every yellow core is 5% skill efficiency. For every trophy collected, gain an additional 1% weapon damage, 1% skill efficiency, and 0.1% armor regen for 300 seconds with a maximum stack of 30. So let's quickly break this down. For every red core attribute, when I pick up a trophy, I'm going to gain 5% weapon damage. So on this build, I have 2 red core attributes, one from the Memento and one from my chest piece. So that's a additional 10% weapon damage when I pick up a trophy. Now, as far as the bonus armor, for every blue core attribute, that's an additional 10% bonus armor. So we're going to count the blues on the build. I have 1 with the mask, 2 with the holster, 3 with the gloves, 4 with the knee pads, and the Memento would equal 5. So when I pick up a trophy, that's an additional 50% bonus armor, and when I pick up a trophy, I'll also gain an additional 5% skill efficiency, which is skill health, skill damage. For every trophy collected, gain an additional 1% weapon damage. So this is the long-term buff, okay? We're going to have a total of 30% extra weapon damage on this build when we get full stacks. We're also going to get an additional 30% skill damage and an additional 3% armor regen. And this refreshes every time we pick up a trophy, so that 300-second buff will refresh, and then you can wait another 300 seconds when you pick up a trophy. Now that we're getting 30% skill damage and also an additional 15% skill damage from In Sync, I highly recommend that you guys use the Stinger Hive, as that's going to increase our total skill damage by 45% with the Memento and also with In Sync. Also, if you guys didn't know, every time a Stinger hits a player, it refreshes your In Sync buff. All right, moving on to loadouts 13 through 16. I'm just going to go over these very quickly, as these are going to be the best support builds to use in PvP. So for the first one, we have BTSU heals. So this is pretty much future initiative with the BTSU gloves. And for my chest piece, I'm using Alp Summit to increase our skill repairs by an additional 20%. We have 1 skill tier, 20% repair skills, 12% skill haste. For the mod, 11.1% skill haste with the talent Empathic Resolve. Repairing an ally increases their total weapon and skill damage by 3 to 15% for 20 seconds, 1 to 7% if stealth. Effectiveness increased by your skill tier. So this is actually better to use than the Future Initiative chest piece, as this gives you an additional 5% weapon damage. For our mask, we have Future Initiative, 170k armor, 12% repair skills, 11.3% skill haste. For the holster, Future Initiative, 1 skill tier, 20% repair skills. For our backpack, we have 1 skill tier, 20% repair skills, 12% skill haste, and the talent Strategic Combat Support. Increases ground control proximity repair from 60 to 120%. For the gloves, we have the BTSU Data Gloves. Now in PvP, if you have 6 skill tiers, you can destroy your Hive, and it's going to grant your team 6 additional skill tiers. And last but not least, we have Future Initiative, which increases our repair skills by 30%, 15% skill haste, 30% skill duration. The 4-piece bonus of ground control increases you and your allies' total weapon and skill damage by 25% when at full armor. When you repair an ally, you and all allies within 5 meters of you are also repaired for 60% of that amount. 170k armor and 20% repair skills. Next up, we have Hazard Heals. Now this is another Future Initiative build. The difference with this one, instead of repair skills rolled on my gear, I'm going to roll Hazard Protection. Now we have 170k armor, 10% hazard protection, and for the mod, 18.2% repair skills. On the chest piece, we have the Yaw gear. This provides us an additional 10% hazard protection, 170k armor, 20% repair skills, 10% hazard protection. For the mod, 18.8% repair skills, and the talent Empathic Resolve. For our holster, we have Future Initiative, 10% hazard protection. For the backpack, we have Future Initiative with 20% repair skills, 17.4% repair skill mod, and for the talent Strategic Combat Support. For our gloves, we have Alp Summit. This gives us an additional 20% repair skills, 1 additional skill tier, 20% repair skills, and 10% hazard protection. And for the knee pads, we have another Future Initiative gear piece with 10% hazard protection. So if we move over to the stat sheet here and we go down, we have a total of 70% hazard protection on this build. Also, don't sleep on the Lullaby Shotgun or the Sweet Dreams. The talent Sandman, melee attacks kill non-elite enemies, cooldown 15 seconds. Melee attacks kill players with 20% armor or less. Moving on to loadout number 15, we have Vanguard. Now this is a nice big shield build to use for your team as far as support for bonus armor. Now I know that in Title Update 15, the shields are receiving a nerf, so this build may not apply for Title Update 15, but it's really good in Title Update 14. Now we have the Liberty Pistol. That's going to be our primary weapon of choice. Hits grant 2% weapon damage, stacking up to 30 times. Headshots consume all stacks, repairing your shield for 3% per stack. For our mask, we have the Punch Drunk Mask, Douglas and Harding, increasing our pistol damage by 20%, 170k armor, 20% headshot damage, 6% critical hit chance, and for the mod, 11.2% critical hit damage. Our chest piece, we have the Point Man, the named Gilligard chest piece, providing us an additional 5% total armor, 170k armor, 12% critical hit damage, 6% critical hit chance, and for the mod, 11.8% critical hit damage. The talent, Perfect Vanguard. Deploying a shield makes it invulnerable for 2 seconds, and grants 25% of your armor as bonus armor to all other allies for 20 seconds with a cooldown of 25 seconds. For our holster, we have the Bellstone Armory, an additional 1% armor regen, 170k armor, 6% critical hit chance, and 12% critical hit damage. For our backpack, we have the named Golden Gear brand set. This is going to give us a 3-piece bonus of 10% status effects, 1% armor regen, 5% total armor, 170k armor, 6% critical hit chance, 12% critical hit damage. For the mod, 5.9% critical hit chance, and the talent, Galvanize. Applying a blind, ensnare, confuse, or shock to an enemy grants 20% of your armor as bonus armor to allies within 20 meters of that enemy for 10 seconds. Now we're using the Banshee Pulse. This is going to apply Confuse, and it's also going to give my teammates bonus armor every time I proc the Banshee Pulse. For our gloves, we have Golden Gear, 170k armor, 12% critical hit damage, and 4,925 HP per second armor regen. And for our knee pads, we have Golden Gear, 170k armor, 4,925 HP a second armor regen, and 6% critical hit chance. Now, last but not least, we have the Tardigrade 2 million armor build. Now, with this build, we have the Gunner specialization, mainly for the Banshee Pulse here. We have the Scorpio for our primary weapon of choice. And if you didn't know, in PvP, shooting a target applies stacks of Venom, which lasts for 10 seconds. Increasing stacks adds more severe debuffs to the target. 2 stacks bleed, 4 disrupt, 7 ensnare, and 8 target takes additional 20% damage from all sources. Stacks no longer increase. Duration of status effects is based on percentage of pellets hit on applying a shot. Secondary weapon, we have the Grudge with the Perfect Vindictive talent. Killing an enemy with a status effect applied grants you and all allies within 20 meters 18% critical hit chance and 18% critical hit damage for 20 seconds. For our mask, we have the Chill Out Mask, mainly for the additional mod slots. Now we have 170k armor, an additional 5% total armor, 4,925 HP per second armor regen, and for both of my mods, I have 11% skill haste and 11.1% skill haste, so I can get my skills back a lot faster to proc my skills and give Galvanize to my team so the bonus armor stays more consistent. Chest piece, we have the Tardigrade armor system, 170k armor, 9.1% explosive resistance, 4,925 HP per second armor regen. The mod, 11.3% skill haste with the talent, Ablative Nano Plating. Whenever your or an ally's armor breaks, they gain 40% of your armor as bonus armor for 10 seconds. Cooldown per ally of 45 seconds. Killing an enemy with your specialization weapon removes this cooldown for all allies. For the holster, we have Bellstone, 1% armor regen, 170k armor, 4,925 HP per second armor regen, and 12% critical hit damage. Backpack, we have the Golden Gear, 170k armor, 6% critical hit chance, 12% critical hit damage, 12% skill haste mod, and for the talent, Galvanize. Applying a blind, ensnare, confuse, or shock to an enemy grants 20% of your armor as bonus armor to allies within 20 meters of that enemy for 10 seconds. Gloves, we have Golan, 170k armor, 12% critical hit damage, 4,925 HP per second armor regen. For our knee pads, we have Golan, 170k armor, 4,925 HP per second armor regen, and 6% critical hit chance. Now, this is one of the best builds to use for your team for support. Tardigrade and Galvanize, that gives my team a total of 1.2 million bonus armor. That's like having 3 extra blues on your build, and of course we have the foam on this build, and we have the Banshee Pulse to proc Galvanize. So that's pretty much all that I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for clicking on today's video, and if you have any questions, feel free to comment down below. Stay safe, guys, enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll catch you in the next Division 2 video. Take care.